Good morning, all my fellow truck drivers out there. I want to do part two on the independent trucker uh, first part that I started out with, and uh, it's a little more in depth this time. And I think it might help somewhat to just to give you an idea whether you want to do it or you don't want to do it. Just things you might run into and things that you're gonna run into, and things that you really should know before you jump in with both feet. So I'm going to start off by saying that I've been a trucker for 50 some odd years, and the last 25 with my own authority, and that's been a real experience, and it's given me a lot of knowledge. And I was told that I should write a book, but I don't think I need to write a book. I think what I need to do is talk to some of the people that I care about. And, trucking is something I've cared about since I was really young, and I just want to make sure that the ones that are still doing it are happy doing it and doing it the right way, and those that are coming into it understand that these are things that have to be done, and you just can't walk in with your flip flops on and go to work. And so I thought this would be a good way to kind of get that message out there. Now this is part two, and it's a little more in depth. I spent 25 years leased to an operator to a carrier as a leased operator, and I enjoyed that. It was a good company to work for, and uh, I'd be with them today if they were still in business. But at 70 with some health problems, I thought it was a good idea to maybe do something different in the trucking industry rather than drive. And everybody knows what their limitations are. If you feel like you're going to maybe hurt somebody on the road, well, it's time to kind of give it a thought. And I had open heart surgery, and I did have a few problems with passing out, and not in the truck ever, but at home, and in different situations. And I just didn't want to put my wife in that position if something horrible ever happened, and certainly didn't want to end my trucking career in that way. So I was offered the opportunity to sell everything and get out. And we bought an RV and we travel around the country now, and we enjoy that. I go to places that I've been before, but only the difference is now I get to enjoy where I'm going in different cities and see a lot of things that I like to do, and mostly because I still like to drive. But I know that driving a tractor trailer is just not in my wheelhouse anymore, and but I do still uh, have a lot of thoughts about things that I like to talk about. And, some of the new entrants into trucking are here because they really can't get a job at anything else, and that's just to me really the wrong reason. And I hate to see anybody get hurt. And lately, we've had a lot of bad accidents that really didn't need to happen if carriers did their due diligence and didn't worry so much about the bottom line and just a body to put in a seat. You really need to have good drivers. And with the way traffic is today, you know, a new driver going into New York City or Chicago, Miami, any of these places that are heavily populated, you're kind of opening your doors to a lot of liability. And liability insurance is one of the biggest killers in the trucking industry. It's very, very expensive. And even as a one truck operator, when you get your own authority, that liability won't change. It is what it is, unless you're fortunate enough to be self insured. And I would bet that as a one truck carrier, you're not going to be able to do that. And plus, you have to put $1 million bond up most of the time to even do that. So that's not really something that you can do. But, uh, we spent a lot of time at this, and, I spent a lot of money to become an independent trucker. Nowadays it's cheap, but you still do have to spend the money on the insurance, process agents, your permits, everything. You have to have everything you have to have, just as a big carrier does, just only in, one smaller amount. But uh, it's still a big amount for a one truck operator. But you're required to do everything that a big carrier does. So with all that said, uh, I started out and I was offered a job with a shipper, as a carrier. So I went and filed for my authority and everything, put out $3,000. And within it took a year, and within that year, I got protested, and that's because somebody thought I was infringing on their territory, which I really wasn't. Um, but that's the reason why, when you at that time filed for authority, you pretty much had to have somebody that would vouch for you as their carrier and would say that they want you as your carrier. Not easy to get, especially when they have bigger things on their plate than worrying about a one truck operator. But I was fortunate, so I did it, and within that year, the company that I was going to do this with uh, changed hands, and that all changed. So now I'm stuck, me, Harrison, and my little truck. And here I was now trying to sell myself with one truck. And I just kept beating it up, and going into places. And, the thing is, I never said no. And I think that's probably what helped. They had offered me loads that, yeah, if it fits on a truck, put it on. That's what I always said. And so it's a good idea to have that in mind, that when you do get your own authority, you're not the boss no more. You're just working for them. But it's a nice way to work, but you are working for them, and you can really not say no. And it's because there's so many other carriers or independents that would do what you do and want to do or are doing. Um, and it happens all the time. It happened to me. I had a number of people that uh, went into my shippers using my name, and some of them did get in the door, and that all works out fine. But when they messed up, the only one that got called in the office and the door closed behind me was me. And I had to explain myself, like, I know them, and while I didn't endorse them coming in here, but you hired them, and it was your freight that you gave them. It's not my freight until you give it to me. And I always held that in high, and I always said that. I said, if you give it to me, it's my freight. If you give it to them, it's their freight. If they mess up, then it's not on me. But that does happen. So as time went on, the selling yourself as a salesman really becomes pretty tricky. You really have to work hard at it, and when you can only give them one truck a day, that's the hardest part about being an independent. Usually shippers want you to guarantee that they'll have 5 to 10 trucks a day. Well, now you're getting into a whole different realm of being an independent. Now you're getting closer to the big carrier money, with a lot more expenses, a lot more problems with hiring drivers and keeping drivers happy, and uh, hiring quality drivers. That gets tough. But I always stayed in the one truck to three truck range, and it was always fine. If I only wanted to run one truck, I could afford that. Uh, if I wanted to run three trucks, I could do that, and I didn't have to worry about hiring, uh, a different driver all the time. Because usually, if you got a small company like that, you get people that are pretty dedicated. Most of my problems were is that they went to work for themselves. They started out, with me, and then would buy a truck and basically do the same thing I've done over the years, and it worked out good for them. I mean, I would never tell them not to do that. So, you know, naturally they and sometimes, and I would even sell my equipment to them, as long as it's what they wanted. I never said yes or no to, if you would like, that's what you want to do, that's what you should do, and don't look back. If you make a mistake, well, you didn't make a mistake. You're just probably going to have to say, well, that didn't work, but you got to be able to say, I did it, and that's important. If you don't do it, we all know. We've all done that. Wished I did, wished I could have. Well, it's not a matter of that. If you want to do it, just do it. If you want your own authority, just get it. It's not hard now. It's only $300. You still have to get the process agents. You have to file all the papers. And what I would do is you could go with OOIDA, super. I'm a life member with OOIDA, and I have to say that if anytime you need help with anything, that's the company to help. and to call. I mean, them people are just smart. Uh, and I enjoyed every conversation I ever had with anybody. And, I have a nice uh, lifetime member jacket that I love, but living here in Florida now, it's kind of hard to wear it. But I'm hoping we can take the RV and go someplace where it's cold and I actually get to wear it. It's a really nice jacket, uh, but it's the best thing you can do. And even insurance wise, they're good with insurance. The only thing I had found years ago, and I don't think that's the case anymore, was that they weren't a big insurance company. So a lot of brokers and bigger carriers wouldn't accept their insurance under liability cargo because they didn't have the assets or something to that effect. But trust me, there's not that many of them that I would even worry about because for the amount you can save on your insurance, just call OIDA. And try to work with them. You'll be very happy. And it's simple. They know what to do. You don't have to worry about doing it. It's just like getting your own authority. You can't just call up Washington D.C. and file for your authority. But these ICC practitioners know how to do that, and that's what you really should use. A legal person that can do everything for you, and all you got to do is sign the papers, sign what you got to sign. They'll tell you everything you need. And as you're traveling around and you say, well, geez, I'm going to Arizona. Is there any permits that I need to have? Now, most likely you might not know exactly what you have to go to Arizona and carry freight in there. Uh, but you drop a dime to your ICC practitioner and he will tell you exactly what you need and what you don't need, and how you can handle it going in and out through port entries. So there's a value there. Their product is very good. Uh, I don't want to get too much off the line of anything else, and I think that's pretty much what you really need to know is filing for your own authority and becoming an independent. Owner operators are one thing, independents are another. Uh, some might argue with me that they are their own boss. Well, and that could be, but you're still working for a carrier who basically has your freight. What I'm saying is it's nice to get the freight you want when you want, but you do have to work at it. It's not, people aren't going to call you just because you got your authority now. That phone's not going to ring. So you're in charge. Uh, on the next video, what I want to talk about is load boards, load searching, um, the ins and outs with some brokers that we have done. Oh, probably thousands of brokers, uh, just because where my shippers ship to, they didn't always have freight coming back. So naturally, you have to use a broker. But we have a certain criteria of a broker we use. And if they're not in our realm, we don't use them. If they pay 30 days, we don't use them because that becomes 40 days. It's not 30 days. And unless you have a lot of money in the bank and you could foot that fuel bill every month without getting paid for a month and a half, uh, believe me, it catches up to you. And then here you are now. You can't make payroll. You can't buy tires. That's not a good way to operate. So always try to keep yourself away from, uh, shippers that or brokers that really string your money out. And then a lot of times, I mean, I have made more than one call to brokers to get paid, after 90 days and they'll just laugh at you. Like they think because you're just a little carrier, you can't do anything. But you got to be smarter, and you got to know how to handle them. Don't get mad at them because that only makes it funnier to them. They'll laugh at you. So, with all that said, uh, that I want to talk about in the next video. Also, mileage routing, what's a good routing company to use. Uh, and even some GPSs that I find are really good compared to some that could get you in a lot of trouble. And the cheaper is definitely not the best. So, with all that said, that's part two. Now it's about 15 minutes of a video, and I think that's enough of looking at my ugly face. But I do appreciate you listening to this, and I hope that we all can maybe get together. If you have any comments, anything you need to know, just leave a comment at the bottom, and I will get back to you, and I'll answer your questions. And I want to make sure that everybody that does this really has a fair shake in the game. And the only way to have a fair shake is to be right and to know exactly what you're doing. So with all that said, I want everybody to have a great day. Be safe out there. Keep on trucking. Bye bye.